Dramily.com, unlimited drama series.
My name is Nathan Foster, and I've spent 15 years building computer networks that keep hackers out of corporate systems. I'm methodical, patient, and I notice details others miss. These skills served me well in my marriage to Julia, until the night she accidentally sent me a video meant for someone else. I was working late in my home office, debugging a security protocol for a client, when my phone buzzed. Julia's name appeared on the screen with a video attachment. The timestamp showed 9:47 p.m. She was supposed to be at her monthly book club meeting. The video started innocently enough. Julia was in what looked like a hotel bathroom, adjusting her hair in the mirror. Then the camera angle shifted, and I realized this wasn't a casual selfie. This was something intimate, something private, something definitely not meant for her husband. "I hope you're thinking about me," her voice whispered to the camera. "Can't wait for tomorrow night." "I hope you're thinking about me," her voice whispered to the camera. "Can't wait for tomorrow night." "No nightstand." I set the phone down and stared at my computer screen, watching lines of code blur together. 15 years of marriage, a 12-year-old daughter named Emma, a mortgage we'd been paying down together. All of it suddenly felt like elaborate fiction. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a frantic text. "Oh my goodness, please delete that. Wrong person. So sorry." Wrong person. Right. I saved the video to 3 different cloud accounts before she could ask me to delete it. Then I called my neighbor Tyrese Harris. Ty owned a gym downtown and had been a police officer before starting his own business. More importantly, he'd been my friend since we moved to the neighborhood 5 years ago. "Nate, it's almost 10 o'clock, man. Everything okay? I need a favor," I said. "Can you come over? And maybe bring some zip ties from your gym." Zip ties? What kind of favor are we talking about here? I told him about the video. Ty listened without interrupting, which I appreciated. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. "You sure about this, brother? Once we go down this road, there's no backing up." "I'm sure. Give me 10 minutes. While I waited for Ty, I did what I do best. I gathered information. Julia's location services showed her phone at the Marriott downtown, not at her friend Rena's house, where book clubs supposedly met. I checked our credit card statements and found charges at the same hotel going back 3 months. Always on the second Thursday of each month. Always the same amount. My laptop chimed with an email notification. It was from Julia's work account, sent to someone named Mason Grant. The subject line read, "Tomorrow's presentation materials." But the attachment wasn't a PowerPoint file. It was the same video she'd accidentally sent me. Mason Grant. I recognized the name from Julia's work stories. He was a client, some hotshot marketing executive whose company hired Julia's event planning firm for corporate retreats. Married, 2 kids, lived in the expensive part of town. Ty knocked on the front door exactly 10 minutes later. He was carrying a small duffel bag and wearing the serious expression he used to have when he wore a police uniform. "Both cars in the driveway," he observed, nodding toward Julia's Honda and an unfamiliar BMW. "Guess book club got relocated." "Guess so." We walked through the house quietly. I could hear voices upstairs, Julia's laugh, followed by a man's voice I didn't recognize. They weren't trying to be quiet. Why would they? Julia thought I was working late, and she thought her little video had gone to the right person. The bedroom door was closed, but not locked. I turned the handle slowly and pushed it open. Julia was sitting on the edge of our bed, still wearing the dress she'd put on for book club. Mason Grant, I assumed it was him based on the BMW in the driveway, was standing by the window, adjusting his tie. They both turned toward the door with expressions that shifted rapidly from confusion to recognition to panic. "Nathan," Julia said, her voice catching. "I can explain." "I'm sure you can," I replied. "But first, let me introduce my friend Ty. Ty, meet my wife Julia and her book club partner Mason." Mason stepped forward, puffing up his chest like he was going to say something authoritative. Ty stepped forward too, and Mason immediately reconsidered his approach. "Look, this isn't what it seems," Mason said. "Really? Because it seems like you're in my bedroom with my wife after she sent you a video of herself in a hotel bathroom. But maybe I'm misunderstanding the situation." Julia started crying. Not the gentle tears of remorse, but the dramatic sobbing of someone who'd been caught and was trying to generate sympathy. It might have worked on me 6 months ago. Tonight, it just made me angrier. "Ty, would you mind helping Mr. Grant get more comfortable? I think he's overdressed for the occasion." What happened next wasn't violent, but it was thorough. Ty had Mason's hands secured behind his back within 30 seconds. Mason protested loudly until Ty explained, very calmly, that making noise would only attract more attention from the neighbors. "You can't do this," Julia said, her tears stopping abruptly. "This is illegal. I'll call the police." "Go ahead," I said, holding up my phone. "I'm sure they'd love to see the video you sent me tonight, and the hotel charges on our credit card, and the emails between you and Mason here." Her face went pale. "You went through my emails?" "Honey, you sent me a video of yourself in a bathroom and then immediately texted the wrong person. Did you really think I wasn't going to investigate?" Ty had Mason sitting in the chair by the window, looking significantly less confident than when we'd walked in. His expensive suit was wrinkled, and sweat was starting to show through his shirt. "What do you want?" Mason asked. "I want you to understand what it feels like to be humiliated," I said. "I want you to know what it's like when your private moments become public entertainment." I turned to Julia. "And I want you to think about Emma. Think about explaining to our daughter why Mommy doesn't live here anymore." "You can't take Emma from me," Julia said. "I can't take her, but I can provide evidence to a family court judge about your judgment and priorities. Judges tend to frown on adultery, especially when it involves using marital assets to fund hotel rooms." The room went quiet, except for the sound of Mason's heavy breathing and Julia's sniffling. "Here's what's going to happen," I continued. "Mason, you're going to sit right there while Ty takes some pictures. Nothing inappropriate, just documentation of tonight's book club meeting. Then you're going to walk out to your car and drive home to your wife. And if I refuse, then Ty will help you to your car anyway, and the pictures will be a lot less flattering." Mason looked at Ty, who was standing with his arms crossed and a patient expression. Mason was probably 40 pounds heavier than Ty. But Ty had the kind of muscle that came from years of practical use, not just gym workouts. "Fine," Mason said. Ty took out his phone and snapped several photos of Mason sitting in the chair with his hands secured behind his back. Mason's face was red with embarrassment and anger, but he didn't resist. "Julia," I said, "your turn to feel powerless, and don't bother trying to delete your cloud storage. I already saved copies of everything." By morning, the entire neighborhood knew something had happened at the Foster house. Mrs. Klein, who lived across the street and treated gossip like a competitive sport, had apparently been watching from her window when Ty walked Mason out to his car. Mason's hands were free by then, but his shirt was untucked, his hair was messed up, and he was carrying his shoes. Mrs. Klein had taken pictures. I discovered this when Ty called me at 7 a.m. "Brother, you need to see something," he said. "Check the neighborhood Facebook group." I pulled up the page on my laptop. Mrs. Klein had posted 3 photos with the caption, "Strange happenings at the Foster house last night. Anyone know why this man was leaving their house at midnight without his shoes on?" The post already had 47 comments and counting. Most were speculation, but a few neighbors had recognized Mason's BMW from previous visits. Apparently, Julia hadn't been as discreet as she'd thought. My phone rang. Julia's name appeared on the screen. "Nathan, you have to do something about those pictures," she said without preamble. "People are talking. People tend to talk when they see married women entertaining other men while their husbands are working. This is humiliating." "Yes," I said, "it is. I made a mistake, okay? Can't we work through this like adults?" Adults don't send intimate videos to their lovers using their husband's phone plan. Adults don't charge hotel rooms to joint credit cards. Adults don't bring their affairs into the family home. Julia was quiet for a moment. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to move out, today. I want you to explain to Emma why you won't be living here anymore. And I want you to think very carefully about how you're going to rebuild your life without using my resources to do it. You can't just kick me out of my own house. It's not your house. It's our house. And I'm the one who's been making the mortgage payments for the last 5 years while you spent our money on hotel rooms." This wasn't entirely accurate. Julia contributed to our household expenses through her event planning business. But her contributions had been declining lately. Now I knew why. She'd been distracted by other priorities. After Julia hung up, I called my office and took a personal day. Then I drove to the bank and moved our joint savings into an account with only my name on it. Legally, I was allowed to do this since both names were on the original account. Ethically, I felt justified since Julia had been spending our money on her affair. Next, I visited a lawyer. Patricia Wells had handled our house purchase 5 years ago, and I trusted her to give me straight advice about divorce proceedings in our state. "Do you have documentation of the adultery?" she asked after I explained the situation. I showed her the video, the hotel charges, and the email trail between Julia and Mason. Patricia reviewed everything with professional detachment. "This is very thorough," she said. "In our state, adultery is grounds for divorce, and it can affect asset distribution and custody arrangements. With this level of documentation, you're in a strong position." "What about Emma?" "The court's primary concern will be Emma's best interests. A parent who exercises poor judgment in their personal life may be seen as a risk for poor judgment in parenting decisions. However, unless there's evidence of direct harm to the child, both parents typically receive some custody." "What constitutes evidence of direct harm?" "Exposing the child to inappropriate situations, using household resources to fund an affair while neglecting family responsibilities, introducing the child to romantic partners without proper consideration of the impact." I thought about this as I drove home. Julia had been working late more often recently, leaving me to handle Emma's school pickups and evening activities. She'd missed Emma's last 2 soccer games because of client emergencies. Now I understood what those emergencies had really been. Emma was at school, so the house was empty when I arrived. Julia's car was gone from the driveway, but she'd left a note on the kitchen counter. "Gone to stay with my mother for a few days. We need to talk about this rationally." Her mother. That was going to be interesting. Margaret Chen had never approved of me. She thought Julia had married beneath her station, despite the fact that I earned more than her previous boyfriend, owned my own home, and had never been arrested or divorced. Margaret's disapproval was based on the simple fact that I wasn't the lawyer or doctor she'd envisioned for her daughter. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Mason Grant. We need to talk." I replied, "No, we don't. You don't understand the situation. Julia and I have been discussing ending things anyway. This doesn't have to get messy. It's already messy. You made it messy when you started using my bedroom. I'm trying to be reasonable here. Reasonable would have been not sleeping with my wife. That ship has sailed." My phone rang immediately. Mason's number. "Listen," he said when I answered. "I know you're upset, but think about this logically. Julia and I work together. If this gets out, it could hurt her business. That affects your daughter's financial support. Julia's business problems are Julia's business problems. My daughter has a father who can support her. You're not thinking clearly. Let's meet somewhere and discuss this man to man." I am thinking clearly. For the first time in months, actually. And we're not meeting anywhere. You can't just destroy people's lives because you're angry. I'm not destroying anything. I'm just not protecting you from the consequences of your choices anymore. I hung up and blocked his number. That afternoon, Emma came home from school with questions. Apparently, some of her friends had parents who followed the neighborhood Facebook group. "Dad, why are people saying weird stuff about Mom online?" Emma was 12, old enough to understand that adults sometimes made poor decisions, but young enough that I wanted to protect her from the worst details. "Your mom and I are having some problems," I said. "Sometimes when adults have problems, other people like to gossip about it. Are you getting divorced?" The question hit me harder than I'd expected. Emma had always been direct, a trait she'd inherited from me rather than Julia. "We might be," I said. "But whatever happens between your mom and me, it doesn't change how much we both love you." "Is Mom coming home tonight?" "She's staying at Grandma Margaret's for a while." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "Can I still do soccer practice tomorrow?" "Of course." "Okay, I'm going to do homework." She headed upstairs, leaving me alone in the kitchen. This was the hardest part, watching Emma process the collapse of her family with the same practical acceptance she applied to everything else. She deserved better than parents who couldn't keep their lives together. My laptop chimed with an email notification. It was from Julia's work address, but the sender was someone named Allison Grant. "Mr. Foster, I believe we need to discuss our mutual situation regarding our spouses. Please call me at your earliest convenience." Mason's wife had figured it out. Allison Grant had a voice like sharpened steel when I called her that evening. She was clearly educated, clearly angry, and clearly accustomed to getting straight answers. "How long has this been going on?" she asked without preamble. "Based on the credit card records. At least 3 months. Probably longer. I found hotel charges on Mason's corporate card going back to January. Same hotel. Same pattern as what you described. So we're talking about a minimum of 8 months. It appears so. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the effort it took to maintain that control. I have 2 children, Mr. Foster, ages 8 and 10. This situation affects more than just our marriages. I understand. I have a 12-year-old daughter. What are your intentions regarding this matter? I appreciated her directness. I'm filing for divorce. I've already moved our joint assets into separate accounts and consulted with a lawyer. Good. I'm doing the same. But I think we might be able to help each other. How so? Mason is a partner in his firm. His reputation is crucial to his earning potential, which affects the support he'll be able to provide for my children. I need to manage how this information becomes public. You want to control the narrative. Exactly. And you probably have similar concerns about Julia's business.
Your ex, the one you said you blocked, 300 messages this month.
He contacted me for—
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
Reputation. Actually, I didn't care about Julia's business reputation, but I was curious about Allison's approach. She was thinking strategically, which I respected. What did you have in mind? I'd like to meet in person. Are you available tomorrow evening? We arranged to meet at a coffee shop downtown, away from both our neighborhoods. After I hung up, I realized I was looking forward to talking with someone who was approaching this situation with logic rather than emotion. The next morning brought a new development. Julia's boss, Richard Baird, called my office. Nathan, I hope you don't mind me reaching out directly. Julia gave me your number. Richard owned the event planning company where Julia worked. I'd met him at a few company parties over the years and found him professionally competent but personally slimy. He had a habit of standing too close to female employees and making jokes that weren't quite appropriate enough to report, but weren't quite innocent either. What can I do for you, Richard? I understand you and Julia are going through a rough patch. These things happen, but I'm concerned about how this might affect her work performance. Julia's work performance is between you and Julia. Of course. It's just that she's been distracted lately. And now with all this neighborhood gossip, well, some of our clients are asking questions. What kind of questions? Nothing serious, just wondering about her reliability, her judgment. You know how clients can be when they hear rumors. I was starting to understand why Richard had called. Julia's affair wasn't just affecting her marriage, it was affecting her professional reputation, which affected Richard's business. Richard, I appreciate your concern, but Julia's personal decisions are her responsibility. If those decisions have professional consequences, that's something she'll need to address. But surely you don't want to see her career destroyed over a misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding. Julia made choices, and now she's dealing with the results of those choices. Nathan, be reasonable. Julia's income contributes to your household. If her business suffers, that affects Emma's welfare. This was the second time someone had tried to use Emma as leverage to protect Julia from consequences. It was starting to irritate me. Emma's welfare is my responsibility, I said. Julia should have thought about Emma before she started spending our money on hotel rooms. Richard was quiet for a moment. I see. Well, I hope you'll reconsider. Julia is a valuable employee, and I'd hate to see her reputation damaged by temporary personal problems. Her reputation is being damaged by her choices, not by temporary problems. After Richard hung up, I sat in my office thinking about the conversation. Julia had clearly asked him to call me, probably hoping that professional pressure would convince me to keep quiet about the affair. It was another miscalculation on her part. That evening, I met Allison Grant at the coffee shop. She was exactly what I'd expected based on our phone conversation. Mid-30s, professionally dressed, with the kind of controlled composure that came from years of managing difficult situations. Thank you for meeting with me, she said as we sat down with our drinks. I know this is awkward. It's practical, I replied. We're both dealing with the same problem. Mason doesn't know I'm here. He thinks I'm at book club. She smiled grimly. Ironic, isn't it? Does he know that you know? Not yet. I'm still gathering information before I confront him. I've learned that preparation is crucial in situations like this. Situations like this? This isn't Mason's first affair. It's just the first one I've been able to document thoroughly. That was interesting. How many others? 2 that I can prove. Probably more that I can't. Mason has a pattern of targeting women who work with him professionally. It gives him cover for spending time with them. And you stayed married to him? I stayed married for my children's stability and financial security, but this time is different. How so? This time he brought his affair into someone else's family home. That shows a level of disrespect and poor judgment that I can't ignore. It also gives me leverage I didn't have before. Allison opened her purse and pulled out a tablet. I've been documenting Mason's activities for the past 6 months. Hotel charges, restaurant bills, gifts purchased on joint credit cards. I also hired a private investigator. She showed me photos of Mason and Julia entering and leaving the hotel, timestamps matching the credit card charges I'd found. There were also photos of them at restaurants and in Mason's car. This is very thorough, I said. I'm a project manager for a consulting firm. Thoroughness is my specialty. She closed the tablet. I'm prepared to file for divorce and seek primary custody of our children, but I want to make sure Mason's affair partner faces appropriate consequences as well. What kind of consequences? Julia works in event planning. Her business depends on her reputation for reliability and good judgment. If clients knew she was conducting affairs during work hours, using business relationships for personal purposes, that would affect her professional standing. You want to expose the affair publicly. I want to ensure that both parties face equal consequences for their choices. Mason will lose significant assets in our divorce and will have limited custody of our children. Julia should face professional consequences that match the personal consequences you're experiencing. I thought about this while I finished my coffee. Allison was proposing a coordinated campaign to ensure that both Mason and Julia faced maximum consequences for their affair. It was cold, calculated, and completely logical. What exactly are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we share information and coordinate our responses. You have evidence I don't have, and I have evidence you don't have. Together we can present a complete picture of their relationship. To whom? Julia's clients, Mason's business partners, the neighborhood social network, anyone who has a legitimate interest in understanding their character and judgment. It was tempting. Julia and Mason had made their choices without considering the impact on their families. Why should their families protect them from the consequences? I need to think about this, I said. Of course, but don't think too long. Mason is already trying to control the narrative. He's telling people that Julia seduced him, that he was trying to end the relationship, that the whole thing was a misunderstanding. Is that true? Based on the text messages I found on his phone, Mason was the one who suggested using your house. He thought it was exciting to conduct their affair in your bedroom. My hands tightened around my coffee cup. He suggested it? Multiple times. He also suggested that Julia should ask you to work late more often, so they could have more opportunities. The coffee shop suddenly felt too warm. I stood up and walked outside, with Allison following. I'm sorry, she said. I know that's difficult to hear. Julia asked me to work late every Thursday for the past 2 months. She said she wanted to have friends over without bothering me. And you believed her. I believed her because I trusted my wife, because I thought we were building a life together. Allison nodded. Mason told me he was working late on client projects. I believed him for the same reason. We stood outside the coffee shop in the evening air, 2 people who'd discovered that their spouses had been lying to them for months. All right, I said. Let's coordinate our responses. Working with Allison Grant was like partnering with a military strategist. She approached the destruction of our spouses' reputations with the same methodical precision she probably used for corporate consulting projects. We met twice more over the following week, always at different locations, always with specific agendas. Allison had created a shared document that tracked our evidence, our objectives, and our timeline. Phase 1 is documentation, she explained during our second meeting. We need complete records of their affair, including financial evidence, communication evidence, and witness statements. Witness statements. Your neighbor Mrs. Klein, for instance. She saw Mason leaving your house. The hotel staff who can confirm they were registered guests. Julia's friend Rena, who's been covering for her supposed book club meetings. How do you know about Rena? I called her, pretending to be organizing a surprise party for Julia. Asked about book club schedules. Rena got confused and admitted that Julia hadn't been to book club in months. This was the level of thoroughness I was dealing with. Allison had been investigating our spouse's affair like a forensic accountant. Phase 2 is strategic disclosure, she continued. We release information in a sequence that maximizes impact while minimizing the chance for damage control. What's the sequence? First, we inform their employers, Julia's boss Richard, and Mason's business partners. We present this as a professional concern about judgment and use of company resources. Richard already called me trying to protect Julia. Perfect. That means he's already worried about the professional implications. When we provide documentation, he'll have to take action to protect his own business. What about Mason's partners? Mason's firm has a morality clause in their partnership agreement. Affairs with clients or vendors can be grounds for dismissal or forced buyout of partnership shares. Julia isn't exactly a client or vendor. No, but Mason used company resources to facilitate the affair. Corporate credit cards, company time, business relationships. That violates the same principles. Phase 3, according to Allison's plan, involved social consequences. We would ensure that their mutual friends, neighbors, and social circles understood the full scope of their deception. The goal isn't revenge, Allison explained. It's accountability. They made choices that affected multiple families, and they should face consequences that reflect the scope of that impact. I appreciated her framing, but I wasn't entirely sure I agreed with her distinction between accountability and revenge. What we were planning would definitely hurt Julia and Mason beyond just legal consequences. The first test of our coordination came when Julia tried to return home. I was working in my office on Thursday evening when I heard her key in the front door. She walked into the house like she still lived there, calling out a cheerful hello, as if nothing had changed. Nathan, Emma, I'm home. Emma was at soccer practice, and I was alone in the house. I came downstairs to find Julia in the kitchen, unpacking groceries like she was preparing to cook dinner. What are you doing? I asked. Making dinner. I thought we should have a family meal and talk about how to move forward. You don't live here anymore. This is still my house, Nathan. We're still married. You're still married to me, but you're also still involved with Mason Grant. Those two things are incompatible. Julia set down the groceries and turned to face me. She'd clearly prepared for this conversation. I ended things with Mason, she said. It was a mistake, and it's over. I want to work on our marriage. When did you end things with Mason? Yesterday. I called him and told him we couldn't see each other anymore. I pulled out my phone and showed her a screenshot that Allison had sent me an hour earlier. It was a text message from Julia's phone to Mason's phone, sent that afternoon. Can't wait to see you this weekend. I've missed you. Julia's face went pale. How did you get that? Mason's wife is very thorough. She's been monitoring his communications for months. You're working with his wife? We're sharing information about our mutual problem. Julia sat down heavily in one of the kitchen chairs. Nathan, this is getting out of hand. Can't we handle this privately? You made it public when you brought your affair into our house and our neighborhood. Now we're dealing with the public consequences. What do you want from me? I want you to move out permanently. I want you to file for divorce, or I'll file first. I want you to explain to Emma why her family is broken. And I want you to stop lying to me. I'm not lying. I showed her another screenshot from Allison Mason's hotel reservation for the upcoming weekend, made with the corporate credit card, for 2 guests. You're planning to spend this weekend with Mason at the same hotel you've been using for months. That doesn't sound like ending things. Julia stared at the screenshot, and I watched her realize that her lies were no longer sustainable. How long have you been working with his wife? Long enough to understand the full scope of what you and Mason have been doing. What does that mean? It means I know that Mason suggested using our house. I know that you asked me to work late so you could have more opportunities to be with him. I know that you've been lying to Emma about where you spend your Thursday evenings. Julia started crying again, but this time the tears looked genuine rather than manipulative. I never meant for it to go this far, she said. But it did go this far, and now we're all dealing with the consequences. My phone buzzed with a text from Ty. Emma's practice ended early. Bringing her home now. Emma's coming home, I told Julia. You can explain to her why you haven't been living here, and then you can leave. Nathan, please, don't do this in front of Emma. You should have thought about Emma before you brought your boyfriend into her house. Emma walked through the front door 5 minutes later, with Ty behind her carrying her soccer gear. She stopped when she saw Julia in the kitchen. Mom? Are you moving back home? Julia looked at me, then back at Emma. We're still figuring things out, sweetheart. Are you and Dad getting divorced? The direct question hung in the air. Julia looked at me again, clearly hoping I would handle this conversation. Your mom and I are getting divorced, I said. It's not your fault, and it doesn't change how much we both love you. Emma nodded thoughtfully. Where will I live? You'll live here with me most of the time, and you'll visit your mom regularly. Where does Mom live now? Julia finally found her voice. I'm staying with Grandma Margaret for a while. Can I stay here tonight? Of course, I said. Emma hugged Julia, then headed upstairs to her room. Julia gathered her groceries and prepared to leave. This isn't over, she said quietly. Yes, it is, I replied. You just haven't accepted it yet. After Julia left, Ty and I sat in the kitchen while Emma did homework upstairs. How's she handling all this? Ty asked, nodding toward the stairs. Better than I expected. She's practical, like her old man. And how are you handling it? I'm staying busy. Allison Grant and I are making sure Mason and Julia face appropriate consequences for their choices. Ty raised an eyebrow. Allison Grant? Mason's wife. She's been investigating their affair for months. Very thorough. Brother, be careful about getting too deep into revenge planning with someone you just met. People handle betrayal differently, and her goals might not match yours. Our goals are aligned. We both want accountability. Accountability and revenge can look very similar from the outside. I thought about Ty's warning as I got ready for bed that night. Was I seeking accountability or revenge? And did the distinction matter if the results were the same? My phone buzzed with a text from Allison. Mason's business partners are meeting tomorrow to discuss the morality clause situation. Phase 2 is beginning. I realized I was looking forward to seeing how Mason would handle professional consequences for his personal choices. Maybe Ty was right about the distinction between accountability and revenge. Maybe I didn't care. The neighborhood block party had been planned for months, long before Julia's affair came to light. It was an annual event where everyone gathered in the park at